Hello there. Yes, come over this way. Good. I'm glad you've made it over to the dragon stables. It's time we pick out a dragon for you. You're of that age now. Don't worry, I'll go through all of the dragon types with you. Yes, we'll go through them one at a time. That way you can fully understand all of your options before you dive into picking the dragon that you'll be bonded with for the rest of your life, okay? Yes, this is just a mini Ember Quill here. You'll learn all about him. Exactly. So who in your family rides dragons? Ah, okay. Wow, interesting. All right, well, it seems like any dragon could be for you then. Let's go through them one at a time. Firstly, I'd like to start with the Sky Carver. The Sky Carver is the classic aerial dragon. You'll often see members of our village flying around on these. They're very good for aerial defense. They're quite a medium-sized dragon, roughly about 20 feet long or so, and about 30-foot wingspan, so decent size, but nothing too big. They've got a very beautiful body. You can see on this diagram here, but the diagram does not do it justice. When you see them in person, you'll understand how beautiful and shimmering this dragon really is. It has sort of a green, kind of tan undertone to it, a little bit like tarnished copper, if you've ever seen that. Exactly, just like that. So it's very beautiful. It's got these ram-like horns that reach backwards. It uses these sort of as a radar to pick up directions to help the dragon navigate whenever it's cloudy out. This is why they're excellent scouting dragons, okay? You can see these horns right here. They're very beautiful. They're a lot like the horns we wear on our helmets. Exactly. It's got a little bit of a pointed snout versus some of the other dragons. You can see right here. It's got a little bit of a elongated mouth, and its teeth are quite sharp. But worry not, because the teeth actually retract into the mouth when not in use. So as you're getting to know your dragon, you won't have too much worry that it's going to bite you accidentally. All of our dragons here are very well trained. Yes, exactly. And we'll teach you exactly how to interact with them as well, okay? So in addition to having the elongated head, it also has quite a long neck, as you can see here. And the saddle sits right on the hump of its back here, which is quite a comfortable position to ride in. The wings sort of stick up through the saddle there, so you'll be quite cozy in between his wings as you learn to ride him. He's got these reptilian-like claws that he uses to perch on cliffs and trees. Yes, exactly. So when he gets tired flying around, you can land on any nearby tree that looks comfortable, or even on a cliffside if there are no trees around, making him a very versatile dragon. Exactly. Now the eyes of this dragon, they're a deep amber color. They're a little bit, they have these kind of vertical pupils. You know what that is? Right here, just like that. This allows it to see extraordinarily far distances. Exactly. So when it's high up in the air, it can spot its prey in the wild, or as we're riding it, can spot different important things, enemies, friends, things like that, you know. This dragon also has a beautiful fan-like tail. It uses this sort of to glide and navigate in the air, and the spines on it are a little bit feather-like. Exactly, they work very similar to a bird's. They just increase its precision when it's in the air. And not shown in this diagram, but a little known fact about them, is they do have a forked tongue, a bit like a snake's, which helps them smell out air currents, increasing their ability to navigate in the air. So what are you thinking about the Sky Carver? You still need a little more? Okay, I'll tell you all about its special power, which is wind weaving. The Sky Carver, because it's so good at aerial flight, can even manipulate wind and air to create many vortexes around itself and its rider. This can be used as a protective shield or it can be used as a weapon to knock other riders off their dragons. Exactly. These are often our frontline dragons. They really help us get a head start whenever we're going after any kind of enemy. As the vortex is also a protective shield, so anything that comes at us, arrows or anything like that, we can just be sure to repel those right away, okay? So what do you think now that you've learned about your first dragon? Okay. Yes, we've got 5 other dragons here for you to look at today. And like I said, once we go through this part, I know it's the most boring part, but once we get through the paperwork, so to speak, we'll move back into the dragon stalls here where you can get a first-hand view of them. Are you excited for that? I would be. Yes, when I picked my first dragon, it was quite the experience. My father would say, "You'll never ride dragons," but things have quite changed since then, haven't they? Yes, indeed, I'm happy that we get to go over the dragons in such a studious way. We used to have to figure these things out one dragon at a time, each rider for themselves, discovering their moves, their abilities, their qualities. Exactly. Yes, for example, the Sky Carver is very precise and calm, so it tends to match riders with a similar demeanor, but it errs just on the side of arrogance, so anyone with a hot head we often put with the Sky Carver. This Ember Quill, on the other hand, is a bit more sturdy dragon. It's really there for the good times and the bad times, so riders that suit it are bold and stoic, we usually say. Although there have been some outlier cases where dragons and riders, you'd never put them together because you'd think, oh, completely different personalities, but sometimes the rider complements the dragon's abilities. Yes, exactly. So this Ember Quill, for example, it's more of a fiery dragon. Even its scales produce a faint fiery glow to it. It's quite a beautiful dragon, although a bit stocky in some ways. Its head is quite blocky, but some people really like that. It's not much bigger than the Sky Carver. It's 25 feet long, but its wingspan is much larger at 40 feet. So this dragon really needs those big wings to be able to take off into the air. Each one of its individual scales is a bit of a chalky matte gray color, and you can see, not close up, but far away, how it glows and emanates just an embery heat color. Yes, exactly, but don't worry, the dragon will not burn you to the touch. You can still interact nicely with your dragon, petting it, soothing it. It is only when you get on its bad side does it decide, well, maybe I don't like being touched on my underbelly. But you'll learn. I'll teach you all of the places our dragons like being touched and where they don't want to be touched. Exactly. The little beans on their feet, they do not like to be touched there at all. So the Ember Quill, as you can see, has these beautiful quills that come down the back of it. That's why it's named that. Each individual quill has a nice glowy heat. These quills can be used as a projectile in battle, but this is not its main defense. In fact, the Ember Quill's main defense is these heat waves that it can emit. And the heat waves do not just burn. No, in fact, they emit a mirage-like effect, which can distort images. Exactly. If you've ever been walking on a very warm day out in the desert, you may have seen a mirage yourself where you're not quite sure if something you're seeing is real or not. It may have been an Ember Quill protecting itself. Exactly. So the Ember Quill is quite a unique dragon. In its ideal environment, the Ember Quill can even become invisible using these heat mirages. This makes them sort of a stealthy dragon despite their large size and quite thick legs. Yes, in fact, they're quite graceful as they fly. You wouldn't think so, but they're really a good dragon for kind of our quiet missions where we need someone to sneak in and surprise the enemy. Exactly. They're very fun to ride. For the saddle, we do use heat-treated leather so that you have no worries about getting too warm as you glide through the skies on the Ember Quill, okay? Their eyes are small and much rounder than the Sky Carver, for example, and instead of a deep amber color, they have a beautiful orange glow to them. Yes, exactly. I remember when I got my first Ember Quill. It was just a cute little one, just like this one here. Yes, they're a little bit of a spitfire actually when they're quite young, but as they mature and grow up, they become more sturdy, more dependable, making them an excellent choice for your lifelong dragon. Exactly. Now the wings of this dragon, they're a little bit coarse. Yes, exactly, but still flexible, and they're capable of getting very good air with them. They're actually quite fiercely loyal, so once you've bonded with an Ember Quill, they really do belong to you forever. The kind of rider I think that would go best with an Ember Quill, someone who's bold but patient still, as they do require a little bit of getting to know them. For example, if you've agitated them, they will begin to pulse an orange color in their leathery wings. Yes, that's when you want to take a few steps back from the Ember Quill and just give them a wee bit of time to cool down, okay? But other than that, they're pretty easy to get along with. I would say somebody who really loves being stealthy, as their heat mirage ability allows them to be quite stealthy themselves, and so anyone who's a little bit loud may not be such a great fit when we need to send the Ember Quills out on a little bit of a surveillance mission. Exactly. They have these big, broad, flat claws. These are used in their natural habitat to climb on some rocky terrain, as they're often somewhere kind of warm, often by volcanoes. We've seen them quite often. They're really very beautiful creatures out in the wild. If you ever get to go see them flying about, they fly in little herds of 4 or 5 little families. I think that's why they're so loyal when they really get to know a human. But should you ever betray them, they will never forget and never forgive you. So if you pick the Ember Quill, just make sure you're fully prepared to give them your complete honesty and trust, okay? All right, excellent. Would you like to take a look at another dragon? Okay, let's move on. This is the Frostveil. It's a very elegant dragon, a bit smaller than the Ember Quill. It's about 18 feet with a 30-foot wingspan, which is a very decent size for a rider of your stature. And it's got just the most beautiful bluish hue. Each one of its scales are a little bit translucent, almost like frosted glass when looked up at close. The way that it shimmers in cold environments especially is absolutely breathtaking. It's got very round, soft eyes that are a very beautiful blue color to match with its scales. It's very thin and aerodynamic, so it's quite quick in the air, but its long, graceful neck and tapered snout give it this very beautiful look. This is one of my favorite dragons for mostly aesthetic reasons, as I'm not really one for colder climates, but luckily this Frostveil comes with its own snowflake right on the back of its tail. This is used to help keep it cool wherever it goes, whether you're in a warm climate or more of a temperate climate. Kind of can supply its own cold. That way it's not too uncomfortable in any unnatural environments. It's got these very needle-like teeth here. They're a little bit scary, but they do deliver frostbite to wherever they bite, and they don't dole out these bites very easily, so you have to really have hurt this Frostveil in order to elicit such a strong reaction from it. The Frostveil has very delicate wings which match with the rest of it, and each little membrane here is almost like a sheet of ice, but They do fly very quickly, so they're not quite as heavy as you'd expect a sheet of ice to be, just more in appearance in the way that through the right light you can kind of see them sparkle and you can see light through them. They're really quite spectacular looking creatures. They have these crystalline spines you can see here on this close-up image. The crystalline spines sort of help keep its temperature regulated. It can disperse any excess heat through these little spines here, help to keep it cold. It's very important that the frost veil stay a bit frosty, so they're often more comfortable in their natural home climates, though we have adapted them with special saddles to remain cool even in our more moderate temperatures here. The saddle here is a little bit longer with multiple straps. That way it keeps it kind of insulated from any excess heat that might be in its environment. Now the power of this mist veil is absolutely spectacular. It has the ability, called mist shaping, to create little structures out of the water in the air and freeze them directly into hard and permeable objects, whether they be decoys or projectiles or even a shield. This is a very, very useful dragon in all sorts of situations, whether we're in combat, whether we're defending ourselves against any matter of things, or whether you're just wanting to do a little bit of target practice. The frost veil won't let you down. It's quite nice to get along with. Unlike the Ember Quill, its personality isn't so fickle. It's very elusive and ethereal, so somebody who is a little bit artistic, has a sense for those finer things, not myself of course, would be really well suited for this type of dragon. We often see our riders who really thrive with challenges do very well with this dragon, because the strategic planning that you need in order to use the mist shaping to its fullest ability really takes some careful planning. What do you think about the frost veil? Would you be interested in something like that? You don't really like the cold? Well, worry not. The nice saddle here does insulate you as well, keeping you quite warm. It's layered with several hides which insulate the cold of the dragon and help keep you warm. It's got this very nice handle here, so you're never touching directly the cold, scaly skin of the frost veil itself, but you'll be able to hold on quite sturdily as you dive through the air, okay? Yes, okay. All right, well, we haven't gone through all of the dragons yet, so fear not, there are still many more options to come. I know when I first looked at my dragons, I wasn't sure who I was going to connect with best, but I remember a yearning, a longing that grew in me a bit like a fire, and well, that's how I ended up with the Ember Quills. Yes, I do nurse all of the other young baby dragons, but I really connect best with the Ember Quills. Now, this next one, it's called a Stone Pulse. I think you might get along especially well with the Stone Pulse. It's a little bit finicky, just like you seem to be, and it's quite imposing too. It's quite large, much larger than the other ones, 30 feet long with a 50-foot wingspan. It's quite impressive, really. And again, it needs those big, broad wings in order to really take lift into the sky and lift its rocky body up off the ground. As you can see here, it's got these granite-like scales, which are quite pretty, but a little bit different than the sparkling vision of the frost veil. As you can see here, it's covered in these rocky protrusions. Both its rocky scales and the protrusions are very, very good for armor. This is a little bit of our powerhouse, as we like to call him. They have these beautiful, personable green emerald eyes. They're a little bit more friendly, I'd say, looking than some of the other dragon eyes. But I don't know. Sometimes I feel like there's more going on behind their eyes than even I, a experienced dragon tamer, could know. These dragons are quite wide, as you can see, with that same kind of blocky head as the Ember Quill, and their jaws are quite wide. Their teeth sort of resemble broken stone. You can quite get a little close-up look here. They're sort of used for crushing more than biting. As you can see, they do quite a bit of crushing. Both their feet and their tail are adapted to crushing boulders, mountains, rocks, anything in their way. Their eyes seem to have very good night vision. We do believe that this is to help it navigate in its natural environment, which is underground caves. Yes, this is a cave-dwelling dragon. Quite unique when it comes to dragons, as they do prefer to be more underground. But the interesting thing about them is they're a little bit slower moving compared to some of these other aerodynamic dragons. So while they can take flight, in general they prefer to stay on the ground. The Stone Pulse's wings are very tough. They're almost a bit like weathered stone, but they're still flexible. When you get into the dragon stables, I'll let you feel their wings, because it's like nothing you've ever felt before. It's like really like a living rock, if you can imagine that. The tail is very thick and quite short compared to some of the other whip-like tails that we've seen already, but it is very useful, okay? One of its main abilities is to smash rock with its tail, so you don't want to be sneaking up behind these creatures, okay? They're a little bit like horses in that way, where they don't have super good vision of that area, and they're likely just to throw their tail down to start smashing before they think. They're quite stubborn in that way, and so that's sort of why I thought they might be a good dragon for you, because you seem just a little bit stubborn yourself, which is not a bad quality to have at all. In fact, those who are stubborn often command quite a bit of respect in battles, but I just think you might be a little bit at home with this dragon, or rather, they might be at home with you. My little Ember Quill here is falling off. It's about time for his nap anyway, but he can stay awake just a little bit longer while I go through these last few dragons with you, okay? Alright, so the Stone Pulse's ability is called the Tremor Call. This ability is quite unique when it comes to dragons, because it so needs this cracking, stomping, breaking ability. The Tremor Call in the wild helps it to dig very deep holes with a really heavy vibration. The vibrations here emitted can crack rock in two very easily, so you want to always stay on the good side of the Stone Pulse. Not only can these vibrations crack stone and dig holes, but in battle, they can actually be projected through the air and knock an enemy off of their dragon. Like I said, they do usually prefer to stay on the ground, but because they do have wings and they'll often have to move from burrow to burrow, they use this ability to bust through anyone that might be in their path. As you can understand, this makes them quite a formidable enemy in the air or on the ground, which I think is quite versatile, as some of these other dragons, they're not as suited for ground, especially the Sky Carver. Very beautiful in the air, but when it comes to ground things, they're a little bit weak. The saddle here has a very sturdy high back. The sturdy high back helps you stay stabilized, especially as it starts to use the Tremor Call. The vibrations may shake you a little bit, but the saddle really keeps you locked into position, okay? I really like the saddle. I think we came up with a really good design. It was difficult. We had a couple issues in our initial designs. We had to find something that would work around these rocky protrusions. Many of the other dragons, like the Frost Rail, have more of a gentle back that was a little bit easier to fit with a harness, but we really had to put our best people behind this design. So rest assured, you'll be cozy, you'll be safe. In the front here, it's got quite high handlebars for you to hang firmly onto, and it even has these nice stirrups because you really need to be kind of locked in so that it doesn't jostle you as it makes these sharp movements or uses its tremor call ability. So now that you've learned a little bit more about the stone pulse, what do you think? Do you think it matches your personality at all? You don't think you're stubborn? Okay, well, I think that's what a stubborn person would say. So I guess we disagree on that. Luckily, we do have a few more dragons we can look at. I know you seem to be quite picky. Usually one of these dragons has already been selected by this point in the process, but the last two dragons are truly the best. Now, I don't say that, I'm a little biased for the Ember Quill myself, but these last ones, it took so long for us to learn how to live in harmony with them. They were a bit skittish in the wild, so they weren't a part of our culture until more recently. Yes, unlike the Ember Quill, the Stone Pulse, they naturally wanted to live with us. We fed them, they stayed warm in our houses. It was sort of a mutually beneficial thing right off the bat. But these last two dragons, well, we really had to coax them to come live with us, and I think they're glad that they did. But you'll just have to let me know if you think it was worth it. So the next one I'd like to look at with you is the Glintma. The Glintma is an absolutely stunning dragon. It's the most compact of the dragons that we house here. It's only 15 feet long, but it does have a 25-foot wingspan, so it still gets quite large when its wings are fully extended, but for riding purposes, the area that you have to sit on is just a wee bit smaller than the other dragons. Its scales are one of the most spectacular things about it. As you can see from this diagram here, its scales sort of resemble obsidian. Polished obsidian with beautiful iridescent glimmers, sort of like the rainbow but shining through a black background. It has these large violet colored eyes. They're a bit of a deep color, but they're quite stunning up close. They remind me sort of a gemstone. Very beautiful, gives you that kind of rare collection feeling. It has these nice shorter but curved legs. They're very great for sort of kind of folding up underneath them to help them be extra compact. As you can probably imagine, they do like to fly mostly at night. Now, these wings are one of the other spectacular features of this dragon. It has these sort of stained glass wings. They're quite beautiful in person. When they do fold down, you almost can't see anything, but the second they pop open to take off in flight, well, you won't believe your eyes when you see them, that's all I have to say. It's got these sort of little fangs on it. Sort of reminds me a bit of a bat, which makes sense because it is a creature of the night. But don't worry, you won't fall prey to this dragon. They are quite sweet, honestly a little bit shy, a little cunning, but they'll bring no harm to you. Once you bond with a Glintma, it's the same, where they're yours forever. They will never have loyalty to another human again once you become best friends with them. That's just how they are. So we usually like to have sort of quick thinking riders on them. Somebody who likes adventure, who maybe's gotten up to a few nighttime escapades themselves. Because of their mischievous energy, they usually work best with somebody who can kind of match that. They have these very short, delicate legs that have these little claws on them. They're good sort of in all terrains, honestly. Grassland, desert land, even by the oceans, a little bit of rocks. They're very versatile feet. The Glintma is equipped with this glowing orb on its tail. It sort of looks like the moon, honestly. It has this beautiful glow, sparkle to it. Can be seen from miles away. Can even be used to light up the night if you've lost your way. Can be used to signal. Sometimes we'll send them out to mark different areas if we need some strategic troops placed there. They're very, very beautiful dragons, but they can be a little finicky at times too. I've had a little bit of an issue getting our current round of Glintma to eat their food. They feed on a diet of fish and mostly other small birds. Very simple creatures, but boy, can they be picky when you spoil them. They start thinking, well, if I can get this good treatment now, why can't I get it all the time? So you'll come to see that Glintma will truly attach to you, and you must be sure not to spoil them too much, otherwise, like I said, they tend to get just a little bit carried away. Now, its teeth are quite interesting. Besides the fact that they are fanged, they do glow slightly when the Glintma opens its mouth. In fact, it seems to have this sort of glowing quality to it overall. Each scale, because of the way that it shimmers, can be used to sort of emit a pattern, a dazzling pattern. That's its skill, the light weave. The light weave can do a couple different things. Firstly, it can do like blinking flashes with its scales, sort of that kind of dazzling pattern. It can very much jar other riders, or in its natural habitat, it uses that to kind of confuse its prey before it swoops in and grabs it up. It can project light in the darkness, which is a very, very useful ability, but this ability with its scales and tail can even be used to blind enemies. Yes, just temporarily, the bright light in the darkness. It really is something else, and it leaves me a little shook every time I see it. When the Glintma are a bit younger, they tend to just be flashing out all the time because they haven't quite learned to control that part of themselves just yet. Which is nice when you get to grow up with them, get to see them from their young stage, grow all the way up into maturity. That's why we like to connect people with their dragons as soon as possible, so that they can really bond and have that lifelong connection with them. It's very important, and it will increase their efficiency in battle, which we do often need. Some of the neighboring fractions that don't agree with our decision to use dragons in this way, well, we like to show them how deep our bond really goes. We're willing to fight to protect our bond with these dragons. Yes, I can't believe that way back in my old grandpappy's day, they used to hunt and kill these dragons. It's such a shame, but I'm glad we've changed our ways now, and we get to have this special experience with them of growing up and growing closer. If you like sort of sparkly, mischievous things, this dragon is going to be for you. What do you think? Do you think you're the type of rider that could master the Glintma? Well, I don't think you're wrong there. But let me show you the last dragon before you go and make any decisions, alright? Now, I realize that picking your dragon might seem like a daunting task, but we're just merely going over this information so you have a little bit of insight once we enter the stables, okay? Trust me, when you meet your dragon, you'll know right away. This next dragon's name is Tide Howell. It's quite a remarkable dragon. It was the last dragon to want to join forces with us, as it took us quite a while to find one. When they're swimming in the water, all you can see is their glowing sea green eyes. They look a little bit like a snake, so at first, of course, we were apprehensive, but they can actually be quite sweet once you get to know them. They have this sort of dolphin-shaped head, which is a little bit peculiar, but if you pick the Tide Howell, you will get used to it. They're quite slender, too, a bit like a frost veil, but a little bit more robust. They're completely covered in these iridescent scales. They have this pearlescent quality which is always shifting between different shades of the rainbow. It almost makes them appear as if they're covered in water at all times, even when they're fully dry on land. Their teeth are quite sharp, but don't worry, again, they are quite friendly. They use these teeth mainly for catching fish in their natural underwater environments, as fish can be quite slippery. They need to be able to hold tight on the fish so that they can get a good meal for themselves. The tide howel's wings are a bit fin-like, a little webby even. When you touch them, they always have this moist feeling to them, as if they've just risen out of the water. It's important for them to maintain this moist texture, as if they get a little too dried out, if you leave them in the desert or they wander away and get lost under the hot sun, it can be hard for them to be able to take wind. They really need that soft, rubbery membrane in order to fully use their wings. The tide howel's tail is long and finned. It uses it a bit like a rudder on a boat, so it can quickly dart to make those optimal movements to catch fish. The crest here is very soft, almost feather-like, which you wouldn't expect for such an aquatic creature, but it is quite an endearing feature about these dragons. They have these webbed claws, again for catching fish, but also for gaining traction on slippery rock surfaces. Yes, as they're standing around tide pools or at the foot of the ocean, they need to be able to hold firmly without slipping all over. Their scales are so beautifully laid down, it almost looks like magic the way that they all flawlessly connect. The power of the tide howl is quite fascinating. We call it the wave burst. The wave burst, as in the name suggests, is a sharp burst of water that it can spray from its mouth. It can spray it in a almost jet-like burst, or it can make a much wider wave. Both of these have different applications. The jet is very good at taking out enemies, zapping them right off of their dragons in the sky, or can be used as almost a protective shield, a bit like the frost veil. I really like this ability because, especially on hot days, as you're flying around, circling, looking for bodies of water, the tide howl actually keeps a little reservoir inside of its chest. Where some dragons breathe fire from there, the tide howl always keeps just a little bit of water in its neck, and it can reuse this water as long as it's not too hot to evaporate at all. It is truly quite a magnificent species. We have to use a special saddle on this one, as it needs to both be waterproof and tightly fitting onto the dragon without sliding off of its slippery scales. As you can imagine, it needs to have a very sleek profile, as well as when the tide howl's underwater darting. It needs to be able to maintain a certain level of aerodynamics. Exactly. Now, you won't always be in the water with it, but oftentimes we'll send the tide howls out, its rider waiting on the shore for it, out looking, hunting for fish often. It's a very good fisher. If you enjoy the open waters or have enjoyed different sea expeditions, you might really appreciate the tide howl as your personal dragon. They can be very compassionate, and they're extraordinary too. So if you want a dragon that's empathetic, that really longs to be with someone personable, the tide howl will get along with you effortlessly. Yes, I'm quite excited for you to get to meet all of the dragons. The tide howls can be a little bit timid, another reason why it took us so long to understand more about their species, but once you offer them a nice fish, they'll come to love you all the same. So what do you think now that we've gone over some of these dragons? Do you have a preference so far? Okay. Well, that's good. Just keep that in mind. You don't have to decide right now. Like I said, we'll head in this door in just a minute, and you'll get to meet them each one at a time. We'll start with the Sky Carver, work our way to the Ember Quill. Yes, you'll get to meet all of them. We don't like having them all out in the same pasture. As you can imagine, things like the Tide Howl, the Ember Quill, they can clash. They can be a little bit moody. while they get along in their different pastures and out in the sky they work together. I find just throwing them all into an arena, that's not the kind of situation that's conducive to that one-on-one meet that you really need to decide your forever dragon. And like I said, even after you meet them, you don't need to decide today. You can sleep on it, you can come back. Some people often take weeks to decide their dragon. It is a lifelong decision. Exactly. No, and it's okay if you take your time too. I really don't mind at all. In fact, I see it as a sign as a very thoughtful rider. And I'm sure the dragons will appreciate it too. People that often rush in to pick their dragon out of excitement or just naivety, well, sometimes we see mismatched dragons and riders. And that's okay. I think over time they grow to love each other, but really once you start training with the dragon, you want to click with it right away. That way you can most utilize all of its abilities. It can truly see your inner self, and you can be appreciated for who you are by your dragon. Yes, the bond between a rider and their dragon is really something that you don't see anywhere else. Even the love between a parent and a child, well, it's not the same. It doesn't have that raw openness that we often see with our riders and dragons. I'm really so glad to live in a society now where we can just be more open with each other and with our dragons. Yes, I think it's better for all, both us and the dragons. Of course, the dragons benefit by getting all of the snacks they want. They get cozy places to sleep. We love them. We invite them into our homes. Some people even make modification to their houses to sort of make them comfortable. When people get frost-veiled dragons, they tend to include an area that has a lot of open windows so they can have some nice cool air, especially in the night. And that does mean the riders have to cover up with a few extra hides to keep warm, but that's the kind of sacrifices that our village is willing to make in order to keep these dragons as comfortable and as happy as possible. It really is a give and take. What we take from the dragons, we want to give right back to them. And what the dragons take from us, they give back to us tenfold. So in just a minute here, we're going to head in, and remember, don't be sneaking in here in the night when I'm not here. Some of these dragons, they can be a little finicky, they can startle easily, so you want to make sure that I'm here to guide you whenever you enter in. Once you've picked your dragon, we'll get you your own stable that you're allowed to enter by yourself, but please don't be bringing your friends in, showing your dragon off. This is how mistakes happen, okay? Alright, you seem like a perfectly responsible rider, but I just need to give this disclosure to everyone because you wouldn't believe some of the miscreants that we've let in here. I got a whole group of young'uns sneaking in. Yes, the Ember Quill was quite furious, let off a huge blaze of fire. You could almost see it from a few villages away. Luckily, no one was hurt, but that's exactly the kind of thing that I'm trying to help you avoid, okay? Alright, well, you seem trustworthy enough, so let's go ahead and head on in there. I'll see you on the other side.